Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to a beautiful Saturday morning in Washington Park. Today I'm going to be doing a tulip tour. For those of you who have been with me on these tours prior, I'm going to modify it so it's a little bit different this year, but we're going to talk about Washington Park tulips, how they're planted, what goes into the gardens here, and what we really start looking for now for next year's planting process and how we do our jobs. Here in Washington Park, we plant about 90,000 of the 187,000 bulbs that come into the City of Albany every year. There are various gardens throughout the park. There are 5 major gardens that take anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 bulbs on the outer road of the park, Plan of the Union. We have featured some of those in our videos. They're gorgeous. We love them. They're some of our favorites. But right here in the specific Moses area, as I pan around, if you can see, there's all sorts of shapes and sizes with anywhere from 3,000 bulbs to 200 bulbs per bed. So they're laid out historically. This is modeled after an Olmsted park. Olmsted was a very, very famous park builder. In the later part of the 1800s, he designed Central Park and many other famous parks around the U.S. This park was designed in that aspect, in that nature. It's really meant as a getaway, so when you leave the city proper and come into the park, you can almost pretend you're not in a city, which was the goal behind that style park. And honestly, we're very lucky that we have one that's so intact and so beautiful here in Albany. But back to the tulips. So behind me, and I'm going to raise this up, I don't know if you can see all of it, we have a large round bed. It's 16 feet round. And in this bed, what you're going to see, I'm going to try to play with my camera a little bit. You're going to see these beautiful red tulips and these nice white ones. Are we getting those on camera? This bed is the bed that we put together for the Parkinson Foundation of Albany, Hope Soars, that they wonderfully come to us every year and ask us to do something nice for them. And Mark Burek, the director and founder of Hope Soars, is just a fantastic man to work with, and we really put a lot of time and effort. This year, hopefully you can see the design, and it'll pop in another week or two, is a tulip in tulips. So as you can see, and as I pointed out, in this garden you have the short red. The short red is actually a tulip called Ile-de-France. It is a single late tulip, which is surprising us this year by opening up a little bit early. And you also have these tall whites that are just starting to pop. You can still see some of the green on the outer edges and the outer petals. That is Clearwater, a single late tulip. So it's coming up a little early, but still, doing really well. Usually they come up a little later in the spring, but we've had a little bit of a funky spring, so things are popping out when they want to. And then, of course, along the edges, we've complemented with this beautiful, beautiful grape hyacinth or muscari. You can call them either. We use the names interchangeably as well. So that is the Parkinson Foundation bed. Next, we're going to move, and as I go around, I'm going to give you little facts and information about the types of tulips we have, as well as the beds and the flowers that are in them. So we went over the 90,000 tulips that are here in the park. A lot of hard work, a lot of energy and effort go into them. They get delivered to us on or about October 1st, usually in that first week. We have to unpack them. We have to sort them by color, family, and bloom time so that we know what we're planting and where we're planting it. Now, a lot of the designs come straight from here. A lot of stuff is really fun, really simple, basic, but you can really do a good job capturing somebody's attention with color and lines, which is really something we try to pay attention to. In the past, we have done beds with a chevron pattern or color blocking. We have tried to have a certain color in each of the beds in each of the quads. Now, I know I'm going a little farther for people who haven't been to the park yet, but this green area of lawn that I'm standing on with these beds is called a quad. There are 4 quads, hence quad, around Moses. In each quad, there are 4 40-foot by 5-foot beds, 1 60-foot by 5-foot bed, 2 16-foot round beds, and 5 small 4-foot round beds. So each quad is mirrored completely by every other quad all the way around the entire park. Now, we have several different ways that we plant. We have several different tactics that we use to get all these plants in the ground, all these bulbs in the ground in the fall after October, like I told you, when they come in, which surprises a lot of people that they come in October. They need to be planted and they need to go through a cooling period of 8 to 12 weeks in order to bloom properly. So what you see is the hard work that is planned an entire year in advance. Typically, when Tulip Fest is here and there's crowds and crowds of people, what I will do is I'll just walk around and very casually chit-chat with a few people, not make my presence too obvious, but see what they like. I pay attention and watch what people are taking pictures of and really gathering their families around to kind of decide what I want for the next year. Sorry, I'm just trying to decide where we're going. So I'll take you over to this small round and we'll show you a couple of the bulbs that we plant that aren't tulip bulbs. Okay, so in this small round, what you're going to see is hyacinths and, if I can get the pole out of the way, a crown imperial or a fritillaria. It's that big funky looking thing that kind of looks like it's got the top of a pineapple with little red flowers underneath it. Let me see if I can get a better shot for you. That is a spring blooming bulb. It has to be planted the same time as the tulips. It is actually in the lily family, not in the tulip family at all, but blooms early in the spring, so we like to plant them. Each year we purchase anywhere between 300 and 500 of the red and yellow varieties. This year there was an issue and we only got the red variety, but we love it so much we still planted it every possible place we could. Okay, so we walked a little bit farther and I have brought you to Akebono. This beautiful, beautiful tulip behind me is a multi-petaled tulip, multicolored tulip. As you can see as I pan across the bed, there are several tulips that have started growing in here that are yellow but also have a little bit more red or less red, with the beautiful red edge and the pink highlights in the petals themselves. Akebono is a Japanese hybrid tulip that has been developed and is a Tulip Fest favorite that we pull in. Behind it you see Pink Pride, and I'll get closer to that in a little bit because there's another bed that we're going to talk about. So one thing that you're really going to notice about our gardens is that they are planted much, much more heavily than you would at home. At home, I believe tulips are recommended to be planted 3 to 4 inches apart, so you're looking at maybe 4 to 6 in a 12 by 12 area, 12 by 12 inch area, 1 foot by 1 foot. Here, we're looking at anywhere between 10 and 12 per square foot. That's how we really get this effect. That's how we really put on this show and have the amount of tulips we have in this area. So, as I said, this is Akebono. Now, there's some debate because it is a double-petaled flower. A lot of people think it's a double late, and then I've also been told, nope, it's a hybrid, it's a Darwin hybrid, and that's the way it is. But, irregardless, they're beautiful and we love them. So, we just moved over slightly from where we just were with Akebono. We're going to look at La Labella. It is this beautiful red behind me. It is a Darwin hybrid tulip. I'm just going to get you guys a little bit closer so you can really say, excuse me if you can see the stick. This year, this is one of the newer varieties that we've had, and we planted this garden, which in total, if you can see as I pan around it, has roughly 25 to 3,000 bulbs, depending on variety. Now I say that because in the middle of this garden, we have a double late. That double late is big and round and beautiful, and I'll pan you that way in a hot second to show you what it looks like. But those doubles often get crown crowding once they start blooming. And we don't want to get them so crowded that they don't have individual uniqueness, and they can't show themselves off. So unfortunately, this bed has been hit with the tulip fungus, so excuse the bald spots. But let me get you close in on one of those doubles that you see. Now really take a good look at that. There's double, triple, probably even quadruple the amount of petals that you would typically see in a traditional tulip. But there you are. Oh, and we have one that got caught by the rain yesterday and held too much in its head. So, as I was saying, this is a double late and a Darwin hybrid bed. Now, I keep referring to these names, double late, Darwin hybrid, single late. What they are is families. The family of tulip that a specific tulip belongs to is actually pretty much the bloom time, and it's all to do with the hybridization of the tulip itself. So a Darwin hybrid is going to bloom pretty much early to mid-spring, more mid-spring. For us in the city of Albany, we understand that Darwin hybrids are going to be gorgeous beyond belief right before Tulip Fest. And the Saturday morning of Tulip Fest, they're going to die. So that means on Saturday morning, my gardeners have to come in and deadhead 3 to 4 beds as quickly and as neatly and cleanly as we possibly can, so that there are not stems for the festival itself. Single lates always do well. Single late obviously come up late spring. We don't plant any early varieties in the park. Any early varieties meaning the beautiful double early that you saw, Orca, earlier this week that my gardener Jena did a video on, that's blooming on State Street. We don't do any of the traditional red emperors, which are the very first bulbs to pop out in the spring. That's a totally different family of tulip, and they bloom extraordinarily early. They're already passing in most of our gardens that we put them in. So bloom time really has to go along with the family, and that's something we have to think very, very carefully about as we put together gardens for Washington Park. Okay, so again, I've walked a little bit. We're away from the beds that we were just talking about. Behind us, we have one of those special beds that I really want to point out, just like the Parkinson's bed. When I took over in 2011, I decided that the Tulip Queen and the Court do amazing work, and they're wonderful girls, and that everything they do, I felt they had to get dirty. They had never been invited into the park to design and plant their own tulip bed. So over the past couple of years, what I have done is I have invited each Tulip Queen and her court into the park to plant their own garden. Every Tulip Queen and Court is different. The girls have wonderful ideas. They are very, very excited to do it. And each year I see them come back during the festival and bring their parents over to their garden bed and bring their family and friends over to their garden bed and really try to show it off. So I'm not going to steal their thunder, because I know that they're coming to do their own video later in the spring. But what I will point out to you right now is this beautiful little Triumph, which is one of those early varieties that we limit in the park. We don't plant too many of them, but the varieties that we do plant tend to last a little bit longer and sometimes make it to the festival. So I'm going to highlight these beautiful flaming flags. I'll get out of the shadow there so you can really see the color and the striations on the petals themselves. But this is one of those gorgeous ones that we just couldn't pass up showing you. Sorry about that. So as we walk around and we're looking at these bulbs and these beds, and they're really blooming and they're gorgeous, I'll take you to this bright yellow and orange one that's coming up. Let me get myself out of the shot there. As I said, we have many, many different ways of planting. So I'll talk about planting for a little bit. What we do to plant a 16-foot round bed is going to shock some people. On a Saturday, I put up an overtime sheet for the sanitation workers to join my crew for the day and to come help us plant in the park. Well, what we do to get a bed like this planted is they take off all of the soil from the entire garden, 4 to 6 inches down. So we have about 3 to 4 tarps laid out on the ground, and they pile all of the soil on those tarps. We then lay the bulbs down on the ground, always fat side down. That surprises some people. They think they're just like Hershey Kisses. You lay them down, and then they shovel all of the soil back on in the same day to plant 3,000 bulbs in just under 2 hours, which always shocks and amazes. In this bed, you can see that beautiful pinwheel pattern. There's a dark purple coming up next to it. We're going to get really close and show you guys some of those dark purples. This bed is comprised of very, very special tulips. We don't buy in great quantity of these varieties because they're a little bit more expensive than the traditional tulip. They're called parrot tulips. Here we have flower power, this amazing, beautiful orange, and you can see the edges are rippled. There's some striation of color in the petal, and they're not dying. That's actually what they're supposed to look like. They open up nice and bright. Like this one is wickedly open because of the rain. I hope you can see that. But typically they open fully and look just like that while they're completely and totally exposed. Here we have Negrita Parrot, which is one of my personal favorites. I tend to like the darker colored tulips, but you can see in here, and especially this one I hopefully have the camera focused on, that beautiful green inside of the purple petal itself is just unbelievable. These are out of this world tulips. And of course we have this gorgeous yellow tulip on the other side that we're looking at here. So I will take you to the next garden that we're going to focus on for this tour in just a few minutes. Okay, so just looking over my shoulder, we're looking at the tulip Sonata Flame. It is in fact a lily tulip, which when they say a lily tulip, it's referred to the shape of the petals of the flower itself. They're very slender with a bulbous bottom and a pointed top. These so aptly named Sonata Flame are that rich, vibrant orange with a shocking yellow tip on each of the petals. Really, really mimics that fire look. So lily tulips are one of those varieties that tend to bloom a little later in the spring, that we use quite a bit of in Washington Park because they are so spectacular. So I told you about the planting of the big rounds, which the sanitation department helps me out so aptly, and they're so good about it. The long beds that we have here, and I'll take you to one right now that's not in the best condition, but I can explain why. The long beds are planted semi-similar. What we'll do is we will dig out a trench. We'll dig out a trench, and plant the bulbs in that furrow or trench, and then cover it up by digging the next furrow or trench. All right, so here we have a beautiful Darwin hybrid pink impression that has bloomed beautifully behind us. And I brought you to this bed to really show you what happens on some years, not all years, but some years. In this bed behind us, what you see is a large section of emptiness where it doesn't look like we planted or forgot, or maybe a lot of people say, oh, the squirrels must have got them. Luckily, we don't have too many squirrel issues in Washington Park, although that's a frequently asked question. And later in the video, I will give some tips that home gardeners can use in order to keep squirrels away from their beds. But at the moment in this bed, what we're really seeing is the effect of that mild winter that we as people may love, but tulips do not. Mild winters with no freeze and no insulation from the snowpack really give rise to the funguses that live in the soil. Now, there's a specific fungus that we have here in the park. We do treat for it. We do have the ability to try to maintain and take care of that, but these warm winters with no real deep freeze really allows those funguses to grow, and they really attack the bulbs. So behind us, what you have is one of those gardens where a lot of those bulbs got attacked with the fungus and unfortunately didn't make it. In early February, when we had those warmer temperatures and the ground thawed and they really started growing, we thought we weren't going to be affected too badly. But as the spring went on, the bulbs came up about an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches, and then rotted from the base, which is very typical of that disease. So unfortunately, we had that disease, but we still have beautiful, beautiful tulips to look at. Again, here, and I'll zoom in for those folks who really want to see them up close. These are those pink impression Darwin hybrid tulips. And it is another king fountain bed, which those La Libella earlier in the video were at. There's our king fountain, Moses smiting the rock with the 4 Israelites around him, representing infancy, young adulthood, and old age on the other side of the rock that isn't featured in this shot. But in this shot we do have Miranda. Some of the Mirandas are opening here. A lovely double red. That's one of my personal favorites. But here I'll answer some of the most frequently asked questions that I get about Tulip Fest. As I stated earlier in the video, we do plant the tulips in October, November, and sometimes early December because that's when they come in. And they do not, in fact, go in the ground in the early spring. A lot of people tend to ask me, oh, how do you get them to bloom all at once? Well, that's pretty much Mother Nature. And the second part of that question is, where do you buy them so that you can put them in the ground and have them bloom? And most frequently, most times people mean, where do I get them already half grown to then get them in the ground? Which is nowhere. We put them in bulb by bulb in the fall so that they really grow through the winter. The next most frequently asked question that I get is, how do you keep the squirrels away and the deer? Well, we do live in the city, and my cheeky answer is cars, but that's not the case. We do live in the city, so we don't really have many deer problems in Washington Park. In fact, I have never actually heard of one here in the park. We do, however, have a lot of other things. Rabbits, squirrels. We have had groundhog at one time. I don't know where he went, but he's not here at the moment. And typically, my answer is we plant in such vast quantities that we don't typically have squirrel problems. If a squirrel eats 10 out of a bed with 2,500 bulbs, I'm going to see it, but the general public isn't going to see it. So most of the time, we are insulated from issues like that. Couple of the other questions I get are, what is the Stinky bulb, which we had looked at earlier, the Crown Imperial, that upside down funky looking pineapple one that we discussed. It tends to have a very skunky smell, and in public parks we all know what that tends to smell like. And oftentimes people during the festival will stop me and say, we need a police officer. And I said, no, those are just my flowers. And then I say, no, those are just actually my flowers. But those beautiful, beautiful upside down red ones have that skunky smell. Now, this goes along with the squirrel question. You can actually use those to deter squirrels. Squirrels tend to avoid skunks. I guess in nature, a skunk is a predator and will attack squirrels. So we plant those, and they tend to stay away from beds that those are planted in. Those bulbs are very expensive, much more expensive than a tulip. So planting those on a massive scale is not something we do, but we do like to have, a few of them in the park to show off the different varieties we can get. Oftentimes we get asked why we don't have a specific tulip. I have been asked on more than one occasion where the orange wonder are planted. And I say it all the time, tulips are like fashion. One day they're in and the next day they're out. You can tell what show I watch on TV. But tulips are often grown by their demand. So if a variety is demanded and is in high demand for a long time, they'll continue to grow it. A good example of that is the Oxford tulip, which has been around for years and years and years. Miranda behind us has been around for years and years and years. We do have bulbs that we get and we've had for a few years and then we never get again, or we can't get in the quantity that we want. Orange Wonder, the City of Albany official tulip bulb, is no longer grown in mass quantity. I know somewhere in the world there is a little orange tulip that grows in somebody's backyard every year and they have no clue what it is, and it's probably an Orange Wonder that just naturalized and just grows and grows and grows. So we're going to move our location from here at the Moses area into some of the outer beds. I know that the birdhouse bed at Plant of the Union and the top of Hudson Avenue has been featured several times this week, so I think we're going to head over to the Henry Johnson Monument and the Lancaster Garden and take a really good look at those and then finish up with the tour today. So any questions or comments, please feel free to post them in the comments section below, and I know that the special events team will get those questions to me as soon as possible. So we'll see you over at Henry Johnson. All right, so here we are at the Henry Johnson Memorial Statue here in Washington Park. Behind me this year, what you see is Clearwater, a tall single late variety white tulip, and Lasting Love, one of those new varieties we got last year that every single person who came into the park fell in love with. We're going to get you really close. Those Lasting Loves are something that are a sight to behold. So here we go. Lasting Love is that rich, dark red with the pointed tips that is just exquisite to look at. They are a late bloomer and will be blooming right about this time. Let's get that chain out of the way so those tulips can open right up. And then we have that Clearwater, which is that beautiful white, very clean and crisp with a little bit of green on the inside of the petal itself. And if we can really take a step back, I don't know if you can see it, we did the bed to semi-mimic the American flag here in front of our city's war hero, Henry Johnson. So we are going to take a quick trip over to the Lancaster Garden, and I will do a little bit more over there with you guys, and then I hope you've enjoyed the tour so far. All right, thank you for joining me here. I am on the corner of Plant of the Union and Lancaster Street. It comes up into the park from Lark, and you have beautiful foliage around you with the forsythia in full bloom right now. Several beautiful trees across. I don't know if you can see the bright white in the corner there. We have magnolia in the parade ground. But here in this garden, and they look just neon in the sun, are these bright yellow tulips. This is golden Apeldoorn. I'll take you in for a closer shot so you can really see that it is a bright, almost pure yellow tulip. They are just fantastic. I don't know if you saw the flies flying around them, but the flies are enjoying them this morning. And these are a Darwin hybrid variety that, again, up early, really showy, does a nice job announcing that tulips are blooming, and then for the festival day itself, they're done. But we love to have them. We love to show off many different varieties. Another variety that's in this garden is, I believe this is Govata, which looks a little bit different than in the garden inside the park. But it has that beautiful Merlot with the outer rim of yellow. So when you are driving through the park, we try to make the experience as beautiful and as colorful for you as possible. And what we've done is really tried to highlight some beautiful beds that are in the park as well as in the Moses area, and highlight our 90,000 tulips. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll be seeing you soon. So in this little clip, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the history of the formal gardens here at the King Fountain statue. Moses, actually named King Fountain statue. Here in this area, we have 65 garden beds. We put a lot of time, effort, and energy into the 90,000 bulbs that go in here and to all the summer flowers that we put in as well. A lot of people tend to forget that we have an entire summer planting program in the area. But this section of the park was developed by William S. Egerton at almost the culmination of the park being installed in the city. Basically, Egerton was the superintendent after Bogart and Kyler had finished developing the plans and starting the park project. Egerton took over and really put the final touches and everything in place here in the park. What he did was formalize this Moses area. Originally, there was no plan in place to have a formal garden section. The 4 quads around Moses, the flowers on Moses, this is all due to his genius in putting a formal flower garden area. Now, a funny fact about the park is there were 2 other formal garden areas. There was an aquatic garden in the eastern side of the lake closest to Moses that unfortunately has been lost with time. And there was also a huge tropical garden area where the birdhouse bed is, and it looked much different in the way back of yesteryear. That road didn't quite look the same, and there was a lot of open area for large garden beds that they could do tropical varieties in. We also had greenhouses here in the park where we could keep the summer flowers and the tropical varieties that couldn't be left out and they couldn't purchase every year. So earlier in the video when I was discussing, this park was really escape from life in the city, so you could come in here and kind of forget you were in the city. That allowed people to see varieties of plants that they wouldn't see anywhere else, that if they couldn't take a vacation, if they couldn't get out of the city, they could really come in here. And it felt tropical, it felt different. And currently we still try to uphold that and put a lot of tropicals in. If anybody's walked through, we have elephant ears and banana trees, castor bean trees, all sorts of wonderful, beautiful things, along with the traditional summer plantings, petunias, ageratum, all those gorgeous, wonderful historical flowers that we try to keep varieties of in the park at all times. So I'll do one more quick pan for you of the Moses area where I'm standing. Behind us we have the linden tree, that big beautiful tree that looks like it was grafted. That's actually not. It's been here forever. And then as we pan, right over my shoulder is the weeping beech. We believe that tree to be almost original of the park, close to 100 or 120-ish years old. We have beautiful foliage right now opening up for the spring, and as you can see, lots of people early in the morning trying to take in these tulips without crowds and without tons of people. So I just want to take a second and make sure I thank each and every one of you for watching this video, for sharing it with your friends. I hope you've all learned something new, seen something interesting, and really have a new set of fresh eyes to look at the park next time you come through. I hope that each and every one of you will come into Washington Park on a typical year where you are able to see the tulips in person if you can't get out here this year early when the crowds aren't here, but I hope that you will come and join us another year. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. Any questions and comments, please leave below.